When people ask me about my childhood, I usually change the subject. It's not that it was terrible, I had food on the table and a roof over my head, but let's just say it wasn't exactly the Brady Bunch. My name's Ruby, and at 32 I'm finally ready to tell my story. Not because I want sympathy, but because maybe someone out there needs to hear it. I was 8 when my life changed completely. That's when my sister Sarah was born, 2 months premature. I still remember my dad rushing to the hospital in the middle of the night and my Aunt Jessica coming to watch me. Everyone was so worried about the baby, and honestly, so was I. I didn't know much about premature babies then, but I could tell from the adults' faces that something was wrong. Sarah survived, but she was incredibly fragile. Our house turned into something between a hospital and a fortress against germs. Mom was constantly cleaning, and the smell of disinfectant became as familiar as the scent of dinner cooking. Every surface gleamed, and God forbid if I so much as sniffled. "Ruby, was that a cough?" Mom would ask, her eyes narrowing with concern, not for me, but for Sarah. "We can't take any chances. Pack your bag. You're going to Grandma's for a few days." And off I'd go, either to Grandma's house or Aunt Jessica's, like I was being quarantined. It happened so often that I kept a pre-packed bag in my closet. At first, I tried to see these visits as mini vacations, but after a while it just felt like exile. I threw myself into school, determined to at least make them proud that way. I got straight A's, joined the debate team, even won a regional science fair. But every achievement was overshadowed by Sarah's latest doctor's appointment or minor improvement. "Look, Mom, I got first place in the science fair," I'd say, holding up my trophy. "That's nice, honey. Did you wash your hands?" "Sarah's been a bit sniffly today." The worst part? When Sarah turned 7, she suddenly stopped getting sick. It was like a switch flipped and she became this perfectly healthy kid. But nothing changed with Mom and Dad. They'd spent so long protecting her that they didn't know how to stop. And Sarah? She learned pretty quick that she could get anything she wanted by playing the fragile card hard. High school should have been my time to shine. I was doing everything right. Honor roll, extracurriculars, the works. But in our house, Sarah's drama always took center stage. I remember one parents' night particularly well. My chemistry teacher had just finished telling Mom and Dad about my potential for a science scholarship. "Ruby's one of our brightest students, Mr. Peterson," he said, beaming. "She has a real future in—" Before he could finish, Mom's phone rang. Sarah was having a crisis at home with the babysitter. "What's wrong, sweetie?" Mom asked into the phone, already gathering her things. I could hear Sarah's theatrical sobs through the speaker. "I can't find my favorite pen for homework. The one Ruby gave me is stupid." Just like that, parents' night was over. They rushed home to console Sarah over a pen. A pen! I stood there watching them hurry away, Mr. Peterson awkwardly patting my shoulder. After that, I noticed they stopped coming to my events altogether. It was easier that way, they said. No risk of Sarah's tantrums interrupting things. When I won the state debate championship, they didn't even put the trophy on the mantle. "Sarah gets anxious when she sees other people's achievements," Mom explained, tucking my trophy into a drawer. College acceptance day should have been huge. I got a full ride to state, academic scholarship, merit grants, the whole package. I was over the moon, until I got home. Whatever. Sarah rolled her eyes at dinner. "Now you can finally move out and I can turn your room into my gaming paradise. I'm thinking 3 monitors, maybe a streaming setup." I started counting down the days until freshman orientation. 4 years of college flew by, with me spending every possible moment in the dorms or the library. Home became a place I visited occasionally, usually for mandatory family dinners where Sarah held court with tales of her latest middle school drama. At 23, armed with my degree, I landed a job as a manager at Thompson & Company. The salary wasn't great. Enough to rent a tiny apartment and buy grocery store sushi, but not much else. I should have been discouraged, but honestly, just having my own space felt like winning the lottery. Then one day, scrolling through social media on my lunch break, I saw an ad for an investment course. Learn to make your money work for you. Usually, I'd scroll past that kind of thing, but something made me stop. The course wasn't cheap, but it was within reach if I ate ramen for a month. That course changed everything. The instructor, Dave, had this way of making complex investment strategies seem obvious. I started small, putting a few hundred into promising tech stocks, then a few hundred more. I studied market trends like my life depended on it, took advanced courses from top investors, learned about risk management and portfolio diversification. My first big win came from a small AI company nobody was watching. My $500 investment turned into $5,000 in 3 months. Then came the biotech startup that tripled my money. Before I knew it, my side hustle was making more than my day job. I'll never forget the morning I realized I could quit. I was sitting at my desk, pretending to care about quarterly reports, when my investment app pinged. Another stock had hit my target price. I did the math. My investment income was now triple my salary. I typed up my resignation letter right there. I kept going to those Saturday family dinners. Don't ask me why. Maybe habit, maybe some lingering hope that things would change. I'd sit there, picking at Mom's overcooked chicken, listening to them go on and on about Sarah's life, while my investment portfolio pinged away in my pocket. "Ruby, you're still at Thompson's, right?" Mom would ask occasionally, not really interested in the answer. "Yep, same job," I'd say, and watch their attention drift away before I even finished speaking. It was easier that way. No need to explain that I'd quit 2 years ago, that I was making more money in a day than I used to make in a month. Sarah was the star of every dinner conversation. She'd gotten into Carleton University, one of those schools where the tuition costs more than a house. "It's so expensive," Mom would sigh, but her voice was proud. "But Sarah deserves the best education. We've taken out loans, of course, but it's worth it for our little girl's future." Sarah would beam, twirling her pasta. "My roommate has a Gucci backpack. Everyone there comes from such good families." The undertone was clear. Unlike your family, Ruby. Unlike you. One Saturday, I arrived to find Mom in tears over bills. Dad was at the kitchen table, surrounded by paperwork, his reading glasses perched on his nose. "The property taxes went up again," he muttered, "and with Sarah's tuition." I watched them struggle, remembered all the times they'd chosen Sarah over me, and still, they were my parents. That night, I set up an automatic transfer, $1,000 a month, to their account. When I told them about it, Mom actually hugged me. It was the first time in years she'd shown me any real affection. "Oh, Ruby, this will help so much. I thought maybe things would change after that. Maybe they'd see me differently." But then I overheard them in the kitchen after dinner. "We should send some of Ruby's money to Sarah," Mom was saying. "At least $300. The poor thing feels so out of place among all those wealthy students." "Good idea," Dad agreed. "She needs to keep up appearances. Maybe she can finally buy herself that designer bag she's been wanting." I wanted to walk in there and tell them everything. About quitting my job, about my investments, about the fact that I could buy the whole damn designer store if I wanted to. But I didn't. I just stood there, shaking my head, listening to them plan how to spend my money on Sarah's social climbing. By the time I turned 29, I was ready for a change. My investment portfolio had grown beyond my wildest dreams, and I was tired of paying rent. After months of searching, I found the perfect apartment in a secure building with a great view of the city. Nothing flashy, just clean lines, good bones, and enough space to feel like home. Best part? I could buy it outright. No mortgage needed. The day I got the keys, I stood in the empty living room, listening to my footsteps echo off the hardwood floors. This was mine. All mine. No loans, no debt, no strings attached. I'd done this myself, without anyone's help or approval. When Mom called to check in, meaning talk about Sarah, I mentioned I was moving. Did you find a cheaper rental? She asked, distracted. I could hear her shuffling papers on the other end. Just a different place, I said vaguely. Better location. Well, don't spend too much on rent, honey. You know how unstable the job market is for people in your position. I had to bite my tongue to keep from laughing. If she only knew that my position involved managing millions in investments, not pushing papers at Thompson's. At the next family gathering, Aunt Jessica asked about my new place. Ruby's renting a new apartment, Mom jumped in before I could answer. But wait till you hear about Sarah's latest accomplishments. She's about to graduate from Carleton University, top of her class. I watched the familiar scene unfold, relatives fawning over Sarah's prospects while shooting me pitying glances. Sarah's going places, Dad announced proudly. Not that we're surprised. She's always been our achiever, already has companies fighting over her, unlike some people who settle for mediocrity. My cousin whispered to his wife, not quite quietly enough. I sipped my wine and thought about the stock trade I'd made that morning that had earned more than his annual salary. But I stayed quiet, let them think what they wanted. Then came Sarah's graduation party. Mom and Dad went all out. Catered food, expensive decorations, the works. I noticed they used the money I sent them to help pay for it. But whatever, I was used to it by now. Sarah pranced around in her cap and gown like she just won the Nobel Prize. She spotted me by the punch bowl and made a beeline over, clutching her diploma like a weapon. Look at this, Ruby. She thrust the diploma in my face. Carleton University, not some state school like you went to, and I already have interviews lined up with top companies. I'm not going to end up pushing papers like you. I took another sip of punch. Congratulations, Sarah. That's all you have to say? Aren't you jealous? I mean, I'm going to be so successful, and you're just, well, you. She stood there, practically vibrating with the need for me to acknowledge her superiority. I could have told her about my portfolio, about my fully paid apartment, about how I made more money before my morning coffee than she'd make in her first year of work. But what would be the point? Instead, I just shrugged and walked away, leaving her standing there with her diploma held high like a shield against her own insecurities. 3 months after graduation, Sarah was still unemployed. Those companies that were supposedly fighting over her, turns out they weren't so impressed with her expensive degree, after all. Meanwhile, the loan payments started rolling in. Ruby, Mom called one evening, do you have a minute to talk? The loan payments for Sarah's education. Mom paused, probably for dramatic effect. They're really crushing us, honey, and with all our other bill, I hate to ask, but could you possibly— How much do you need? I asked, already knowing I'd regret this. Well, if you could increase your monthly help to $2,000, that would be such a blessing. I thought about all the times they dismissed my achievements, all the times Sarah had mocked my career. But I also thought about my bank account, with its comfortable 7 figures that my family knew nothing about. Okay, I said finally. I'll set up the new amount starting next month. Mom's thank you was barely out before she started planning how to spend it. This will help so much with Sarah's loan payments, and maybe we can help her buy some proper interview clothes. A few weeks later, Sarah finally landed a job at the same company where Dad had gone to college with the HR director. The irony wasn't lost on me. When she ended up with the title of manager, I stopped by their house one weekend and found Sarah sprawled on the couch, scrolling through apartment listings on her phone. God, everything's so expensive, she whined. I can't believe I have to live here with Mom and Dad. This is so embarrassing. You could look at some smaller apartments, I suggested, or maybe outside the city center. She looked at me like I'd suggested she live in a dumpster. I need to be in the right neighborhood, Ruby. Not that you'd understand. Some of us have standards. I glanced around at our parents' modest living room where she was currently living rent-free, but kept my mouth shut. Anyway, she continued, tossing her phone aside. This is just temporary. Unlike you, I'm not going to be stuck as a manager forever. I have actual potential. As Thanksgiving approached, Mom went into her usual hosting frenzy. Every year, she insisted on doing everything herself, turning the kitchen into her personal stress domain. But this year was different. "I don't know what I'm going to do," she moaned over the phone a week before the holiday. "I sprained my back getting Sarah's laundry out of the dryer, and I can barely stand up straight. How am I supposed to cook for 20 people?" "Why don't you let me handle it?" I offered. "I can have everything catered from that new restaurant downtown." "You're such a good daughter," Mom gushed. "I don't know what we'd do without you." I caught sight of Sarah in the background of our video call, rolling her eyes dramatically. Mom's praise of me, however slight, was clearly ruining her day. Thanksgiving Day started like any other family gathering. The catered food arrived perfectly on time, and I helped Mom arrange everything while trying to ignore Sarah's running commentary about how store-bought stuffing could never compare to homemade. I brought my laptop along because the markets in Asia would be opening during dinner, and I had a few positions I needed to monitor. I set it up in my old room and left it running while I joined the family. The food was excellent, definitely better than Mom's usual dried-out turkey. As everyone settled in with their plates, Mom couldn't help but mention her back again. "I was so worried about how I'd manage the cooking," she said, addressing the whole table of aunts, uncles, and cousins. "But Ruby stepped in and arranged for all this lovely catered food. Wasn't that thoughtful?" "That's really nice of you, Ruby," Aunt Jessica smiled at me. "It must have been expensive." "Oh, it's nothing," I said, trying to deflect the attention. "I'm just glad everyone's enjoying it." "She's doing well enough at that management job to help us out quite a bit," Mom added proudly. "Probably the first time she'd bragged about me in years." I noticed Sarah's face darkened. She pushed her chair back abruptly and left the room. I thought she was just having one of her usual tantrums, but something felt different this time. She returned moments later, clutching my laptop with a triumphant smirk that made my blood run cold. "Let's see just how well Ruby's really doing," she announced to the whole table. "Since she's so generous, I bet she won't mind if I show everyone her bank account. Time to prove what a loser she really is." I jumped up from my chair. "Sarah, don't." But it was too late. She had already turned the laptop around, my banking app still open. From my earlier check, the room went dead silent. Sarah's face drained of color. She looked like she'd seen a ghost. Her hand started shaking so badly I thought she might drop my laptop. "Sarah?" Mom asked, concerned. "What's wrong? What does it say?" Sarah's voice came out as barely a whisper. $4 million. The silence that followed was deafening. I could hear the tick of Mom's ancient kitchen clock, the hum of the refrigerator, the sound of my cousin's fork clattering onto his plate. "There must be some mistake," Aunt Jessica said, peering at the screen. "Ruby's a manager at Thompson." "I haven't worked at Thompson for years," I said quietly, finally letting the truth out. "I quit to focus on investing full-time. I studied the markets, took courses, learned everything I could, and I got good at it. Really good." "You mean you're rich?" Sarah's voice cracked on the last word. I took a deep breath and looked around the table at my family's shocked faces. "I've been investing for years now. Started small, learned as I went. Yes, I have $4 million in that account. And no, I wasn't hiding it. You all just never asked." The silence lasted exactly 3 seconds before Mom's scream shattered it like glass. "$4 million?" She shot up from her chair, her face turning an alarming shade of red. "You have $4 million and you've been letting us struggle all this time?" I stared at her in disbelief. "Struggle? I send you $2,000 every month. You're a millionaire." She was practically hysterical now, her voice reaching pitches I didn't know were possible. "Your sister has student loans. We have bills. How could you be so selfish, so greedy? Dad joined in, his face twisted with anger. "We raised you better than this, Ruby. To think you've been hoarding money while your own family suffers." I felt something snap inside me. Years of being the second choice, the afterthought, the reliable but unimportant daughter. It all came rushing out. Hoarding money? Are you serious? I laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Where were Mom and Dad's savings for your college, Sarah? Oh wait, they didn't save anything because they spent it all on your endless demands. But funny thing, they didn't pay for my college either, remember that? I got a full scholarship while you went to your fancy private university on loans." "That's different," Mom snapped. Sarah wanted, Sarah. I was standing now too. "It's always been about Sarah." "Well, guess what? My money is mine. I earned it. Every penny." $2,000 is nothing to you," Mom shouted back. "You should be sending us at least $10,000 a month. We're your parents." The laugh that burst out of me was almost manic. "10,000? You want $10,000 a month for what? So you can keep spoiling your precious Sarah?" I turned to my sister, who was shrinking back now. "You wanted to prove I was a loser? Surprise. The sister you've looked down on for years, the one you mocked for being just a manager, turns out she's the successful one. How does it feel?" The relatives sat frozen around the table, forks suspended midway to their mouths, watching the scene unfold like a tennis match from hell. "Well, if you're so successful," Mom spat, "you can certainly afford to help your family more. It's your duty." "My duty?" I walked over to Sarah and snatched my laptop from her hands. "My duty ended the day you decided Sarah was the only daughter worth caring about. She's the promising one, remember? The one with potential. Well, let her fulfill that potential and help you pay the bills." Aunt Jessica tried to intervene. "Maybe we should all just calm down." But there was no calming this storm. Mom and Dad were both shouting now, their words overlapping into a hurricane of accusations and demands. Sarah had started crying, her go-to move when things didn't go her way. Without another word, I walked out of my childhood home, the sound of my mother's continued screaming following me all the way to my car. The messages started before I even got home that night. My phone buzzed constantly with texts and calls from Mom, Dad, and Sarah. At first, they were angry demands. Then came the guilt trips. I tried responding at first, hoping maybe they'd somehow understand, but it was like talking to a wall. They didn't want to understand. They just wanted access to my bank account. Then Mom took it to social media. Her post was a masterpiece of maternal martyrdom. Heartbroken to discover my eldest daughter has become a millionaire while watching her family struggle. She refuses to help her sister with college loans or support her aging parents. Money truly changes people. Please pray for Ruby to remember her family values. The comments poured in. Family friends I hadn't seen in years suddenly had strong opinions about my character. How could she be so heartless? I always knew there was something off about that one. What kind of person abandons their family like this? Mom liked every single comment, adding little crying emojis and "thank you for understanding" responses. My relatives, who had witnessed the Thanksgiving meltdown firsthand, notably stayed quiet, but their silence didn't help much against the mob of family friends calling me everything from ungrateful to evil. That was the last straw. I opened my banking app and stared at the recurring transfer to my parents, $2,000 monthly, which they dismissed as pocket change. With one click, I canceled it. I sent Mom one final message. "I've canceled the monthly transfers. I'm done being your ATM. Don't contact me again." They didn't take the hint. The calls increased, now coming at all hours. Sarah tried using different numbers when I blocked hers. Dad left long, rambling voicemails about family duty. Mom's social media campaign kicked into high gear. I blocked them all. Phone numbers, email addresses, social media accounts. But I knew they wouldn't stop there. "James." I called down to my building's concierge. I need to add some names to the do not admit list. I gave him their names and descriptions, even showed him pictures. He nodded understandingly, making careful notes. Sure enough, the very next day, James called up to let me know my parents and Sarah had tried to force their way in. They'd caused quite a scene in the lobby, threatening to call the police. That night, I opened my laptop and started researching real estate in other states. Maybe it was time for a fresh start somewhere new, somewhere they couldn't find me. Some might call it running away. I call it setting boundaries. They had their chance. Years of chances, actually. They chose to ignore my achievements, belittle my success, and favor Sarah at every turn. Now that they've shown exactly how they view me, I feel no obligation to maintain the relationship, and as I research homes in distant cities, I feel nothing but relief. Sometimes the healthiest thing you can do for yourself is walk away, especially from family. Story 2. Surrounded by winding streams and undulating hills in the center of a charming town, I grew raised in an environment far apart from the sparkle and splendor of city life. With its creaking wooden flooring and windows overlooking expansive fields, our tiny, aged home was a planet unto itself. My tale started here, in the warmth and simplicity of familial love. Despite their lack of wealth, my parents were wise and caring. In addition to building furniture, my father, a carpenter in the area, taught me the importance of hard work and humility with his kind yet roughened hands from years of effort. As a schoolteacher, my mother surrounded our home with books and stories, creating stories that nourished my fantasies and ignited my imagination. Our tiny village was a slow, unassuming place to live. The neighbors greeted one another with a sense of togetherness and familiarity. Our social calendar's highlights were events. I loved this life, enjoying the little things in life. The sound of birdsong at dawn, the rustle of leaves beneath feet, and the crisp smell of the land after rain. I met Mark for the first time in the neighborhood library. I had never met anyone like him. A metropolitan traveler who exudes refinement yet is modest in character. His family was well known in the business community, and their riches and power extended well beyond the skyscrapers in the city. Mark, however, was a welcome exception to that environment, with his effortless smile and sincere curiosity in my everyday stories. Like two universes carefully circling each other, our first exchanges were hesitant. He talked about the fast-paced, limitless chances and brilliant lights of city living. I talked about my town, the yearly harvest celebration, the peaceful strolls down the stream, and the tight-knit community. We would frequently get together at the old park seat by the lake in those early days. We spoke for hours on end. The lake's serene waters, which mirror the shifting colors of the sky, bore witness to our developing relationship, an unseen thread connecting our separate worlds. One evening, Anna Mark spoke to me with a vulnerability in his voice that I had never noticed before. People who are more concerned with status and money have always been around me. However, I discovered a tranquility with you that I was unaware of. You have demonstrated to me a distinct, sincere, and loving way of living. I was very moved by what he said. Mark, our origins do not define who we are. The important thing is who we are together. You've given me a fresh outlook on life, allowing me to see visions I never would have otherwise. As our bond grew, Mark opened up to me about his family, especially his mother, who was a refined but demanding woman. He talked respectfully of her, but in his remarks, there was a deeper worry. She believes that I should be with someone of her own choosing. All I'm concerned about is her reaction. To us, well, I felt the little trembling as I stretched out and took his hand in mine. I told him we will deal with that together. Expectations and origins don't matter in love. It's about two individuals who, in spite of everything, decide to be together. Mark's proposal day was as modest as our relationship. Just a sincere vow of a life together without any extravagant displays. I knew this was only the beginning as I gazed into his eyes, which were filled with love and optimism. I was nervous the night I was supposed to meet Mark's family. As we got closer to a glaring reminder of the worlds Mark and I come from, the magnificence of their estate loomed huge. Mark looked at me comfortingly as he grasped my hand. "Anna, just be yourself. You just have to be that." I tried to calm the growing anxiousness with a feeble grin. "I only hope I don't seem out of place to your mom." With a tinge of worry in his eyes, Mark let out a sigh. "Mom is a little too much. Just keep in mind that I'm with you here." We walked inside the lavish dining room. We were met by Marion, Mark's mother, a statuesque, austere woman. A sudden flicker of disdain swept across her face and caught my attention. My kid has fallen in love with this young woman, an intriguing decision. Mark. It was a lavish dinner. I couldn't even identify the dishes on the table. Always the lovely hostess, Mark's mother smiled mischievously and brought me a dish. "These foods might be a little too fancy for you, Anna, I guess. If you like, we can obtain something easier." Despite feeling embarrassed, I was able to reject politely. "Thank you, but no. I'm always willing to try anything new." Her remarks became sharper as the evening went on. She looked at my clothing. "I had thought it was a basic yet tidy suit. Is that what your community considers appropriate evening attire?" Finding stylish clothing on a tight budget may be difficult. Mark interrupted, attempting to change the subject, but his mother persisted. "Tell me about your parents' jobs, Anna." "Learning about different backgrounds is always fascinating," I said, feeling the weight of her criticism. "My mother is a teacher, and my father is a carpenter." "How charming." With an air of condescension in her voice, she answered, "Dedicated individuals, I'm sure. However, I guess they were unable to provide you with much of a financial advantage." As the evening went on, she made fun of my small-town origins, my parents' lowly jobs, and even my pay, which she had somehow discovered. Despite their civility, each remark was incisive enough to pierce. Mark was clearly uneasy, and her amusement at his attempts to protect me only grew. Daniel, Mark's father, drew me aside as we were leaving, grinning kindly. "You took good care of yourself, Anna. Avoid letting her affect you. She will arrive in the vehicle." Mark sincerely apologized. "Anna, I'm so sorry. I didn't anticipate her being so severe." I exhaled, my voice a mixture of hurt and resolve. "It's all right, Mark. Even though I knew it wouldn't be simple, what counts is that I love you." His mother's remarks still stung me as I laid in bed that night, but a resolution was growing underneath the pain. There was more to this than simply fitting in. It was a test of my fortitude and our love, and I was prepared to meet it head-on. Excitement and, regrettably, mounting stress were in the air as the wedding day drew near. Marion, who had volunteered to supervise the arrangements, appeared to take a strange delight in disparaging my decisions and thoughts at every opportunity. The wedding dress was brought up one day while Mark and his mother were talking about the wedding arrangements. I thought that the dress I had picked reflected my personality. It was lovely but simple. But Mark's mother thought otherwise. "Anna, that outfit. It's really simple. On your special day, don't you want to stand out?" "After all," she replied, "you're marrying into the family." A tone of condescension permeated her speech. Mark looked at me encouragingly as he gripped my hand beneath the table. "Anna looks stunning in her outfit, Mom. She made the ideal decision." However, his mother persisted. "Well, let's be practical, Mark. This is a well-known occasion. People have specific expectations. You ought to think of something more appropriate for our family standing, Anna, my love." Even though her comments stung, I made an effort to speak steadily. "Thank you for your concern, but I like my clothing. It holds significant meaning for me." She waved dismissively in return. "Well, I guess it's your day, but keep in mind that it's not about you alone. It also has to do with how you portray us." Her remarks got sharper and more frequent as the days passed. Marianne took issue with the meal selections, the floral arrangements, and even the invites. Every comment was a subliminal jab at my upbringing and my failure to live up to her high expectations. This was a topic that Mark and I discussed a lot, sometimes late at night. "It's unbelievable how challenging she is being," Mark would say, his voice full of irritation. "I wish she could see how wonderful you are and how you bring me joy." His arms would envelop me as I lay there. My heart is filled with both love and sadness. I was aware that marrying into your family would not be simple, but I didn't think it would be this difficult. The wedding day came into being in sharp contrast to the internal conflict I was experiencing. Marianne had always been critical, but my parents and I had worked hard to make everything perfect. I thought the day would go smoothly as I put on my understated yet sophisticated attire. The ceremony was lovely, full of sincere vows and love. Mark's eyes gleamed with hope and love, our thoughts, as we stated. But the fear of the reception that followed, especially the speeches, hung over the happy event. Marianne seized the microphone as was to be anticipated, and her presence commanded the attention of the room. As she started talking, there was a lot of anticipation in the air. Her voice was crisp as she began, "Ladies and gentlemen, we've come together today to see my son Mark and Anna be married. Consider someone from a different social circle." The visitors began whispering to one another. A chilly chill went through my body. She went on, her remarks piercing and uncompromising, while others would applaud Mark for helping a beggar off the streets out of altruism. "We have to exercise caution. Maintaining the high standards and reputation of our family is crucial, and we must not allow individuals who are obviously freeloaders to undermine them by clinging to a higher-ranking family." A startled stillness descended upon the room. My parents' expressions were a mixture of amazement and pain as they gazed at me. Mark's expression was one of incredulity and rage. Uncertain of how to respond, the guests, a mix of our friends and Mark's high society acquaintances, watched uneasily. A deep sense of humiliation overcame me as my heart fell. Her public displays of cruelty went beyond simple insults. They were an intentional attempt to humiliate and disgrace me in front of everyone we loved. She made a forced toast to our future as she wrapped up her remarks. The clapping was slow and hushed. There was an unsettling stillness in the room. Her hateful remarks ruined the celebration's enthusiasm. Mark got to his feet, his voice quivering a little. "I apologize, Anna. What I wanted was not this." There was a mixture of love and grief in his remorseful eyes. I felt very embarrassed as I glanced around at our visitors' startled expressions. The air hung heavy with the weight of her words, putting a cloud over what should have been our most joyous day. Following Mark's mother's derogatory remarks, the reception was still heated when his grandmother, Mrs. Eleanor, a respected family authority, asked to use the microphone. All of the visitors were instantly drawn to her composed manner and solemn look. "Good night." Her voice was forceful and clear as she started. "Anna, I must tell you something vital. Today, you have been the target of unjustified criticism. No one should receive criticism, particularly on their wedding day." I looked up in shock, and Mark, standing next to me, seemed just as shocked. Then Mrs. Eleanor turned to Marianne. "It appears that we have lost our origins and history. I want to remind everyone here, but especially you, that you were a maid laboring beneath this exact roof before you were the lady of the house. Your husband was introduced to you here." There was silence in the room. Mark's mother's eyes widened in surprise and shame, and her cheeks paled slightly. Mrs. Eleanor went on in an uncompromising tone. "Therefore, it is not only absurd, but also incredibly hypocritical for a former maid to stand here and disparage someone for their modest upbringing and means." What I was hearing was so unbelievable. A startled quiet fell over the room. Every visitor was listening intently to what Mrs. Eleanor said. "As someone who has overcome hardship, you should be the last to condemn or disparage someone else because of their upbringing. We should be proud of Anna's ethics and strength, not deride her for it." The visitors shuffled uneasily, and rumors started to spread. Marianne remained seated. Her expression showed how Mrs. Eleanor's remarks affected her. In our family, we prioritize character over riches, compassion above position. I am honored to have Anna as a member of our family since she is a living example of these principles. Mrs. Eleanor said, looking at me with a soothing glance. The audience exploded in cheers, quite the opposite of the previous subdued reaction. Sitting there, Marian felt utterly humbled. An evident sense of guilt replaced her previous bravado. "It's not that I felt sorry for her," Mark said to me in a whisper. "I never thought Grandma would defend us in this way." With a mixture of relief and appreciation, I gripped his hand. "She is incredible." It felt lighter for the remainder of the evening. Mrs. Eleanor's open defense cleared the air. The guests came over with genuine grins and heartfelt congrats. I felt that they were all on my side. It was really satisfying. I felt more confident and like I belonged as we walked out of the reception hand in hand. The remarks of Mrs. Eleanor had changed the situation, upending the cunning scheme of a nasty and not very intelligent woman. Unspoken anxiety lingered over Mark's family like a thick cloud in the days after the wedding. At a family gathering at Mrs. Eleanor's home, when anticipation and anxiety were in the air, everything came to a climax. Mrs. Eleanor opened without introducing herself as we assembled in the opulent living room. Her tone was resolute and forceful. "It is impossible to ignore what transpired at the wedding. It was shameful, the way you spoke to Anna." Her eyes were keen as she spoke directly at Marian. Normally so calm, Mark's mother appeared tiny. Her typical self-assurance had faded. "I've already apologized to Anna Eleanor." With a trace of rebellion in her voice, she spoke. Mrs. Eleanor shot back that it was more than an apology. "Your behavior affects the whole family. You've grown used to living off of the family's money without realizing how valuable it is." With a solemn gaze, Mark's father nodded in accord. "My mom is correct. You've forgotten the crucial things." Mrs. Eleanor then clearly and purposefully explained her choice. "I've made the decision to stop providing you with financial assistance. It's time for you to stop stealing from this family and start giving back. You'll have to learn to live within your means and obtain a job." Marian's expression was clearly shocked. She looked to her husband for help. "This cannot be agreed upon. She can't simply stop talking to me like Wei." Daniel, however, took her by surprise. "On this, I agree with my mother. This time, you've gone too far. It's in your best interest." Marian's gaze grew irate and incredulous. The weight of her new reality was causing her to lose her normal composure. Mark, who had remained quiet, raised his voice steadily. "Grandma's choice is reasonable, but it's cruel, Mom. You must be aware of the consequences of your words and deeds." As I saw the drama play out, I had a mixture of relief and pity. Under the table, Mark gripped my hand, a tacit expression of solidarity. Mark's mother was in a state of shock at the end of the meeting. Slowly, the truth of her circumstances began to set in. She was clearly accustomed to living at her family's cost, and the mere notion of employment gave her a migraine. I could hardly stop laughing. Mark leaned very close as we walked away. I never imagined the day would come when my mother would run out of things to say. Perhaps, though, this is what she needs to alter. With cautious optimism for the future, I nodded. Perhaps this will be a new beginning for her, for all of us. It had been a difficult but essential family reckoning. It was an important turning point that would, ideally, improve the dynamics in Mark's family. As Mark and I strolled along the sandy beaches on our honeymoon, it was a pleasant diversion. The waves' calming murmur offered a much-needed break from the recent family strife. Mark put his arm around me one night as we were watching the sunset. "I apologize, Anna, that our wedding became such a fiasco. I wish that had not happened." I felt the warmth of his hug as I leaned against him. "Don't worry, Mark. You weren't at fault. The fact that we are now together and free from that tension is what counts." Gazing out over the water, Mark let out a sigh. "Yes, but we'll have to confront my mom's predicament when we return. She is going to have a difficult time." I acknowledged his worry and nodded. Perhaps this will be an opportunity for her to develop and gain a new perspective. We explore throughout the day and discuss our future at night. The difficulties we had encountered appeared to deepen our relationship and confirm our love for one another. We were packing our bags on the night before we left. Mark had a contemplative expression. "Anna, you are aware of all that occurred. It helped me understand how much you mean to me. I can't fathom living my life with anybody else." His comments moved me, and I grinned. "Mark, I feel the same way. Despite all we've been through, our bond has only grown stronger. We can handle whatever comes our way, as long as we're in the same place." I felt at ease as we made our way home. In addition to providing a respite from the chaos, the honeymoon allowed us to strengthen our relationship, to get ready for the next phase of our life. We were going back to a different world. However, we were working together, stronger and closer than before. With Mark at my side, I was prepared to face the uncertain future. Mark and I were not sure what to expect at his family's house when we returned from our honeymoon. It was a peaceful drive. We were both preoccupied with the changing dynamics of the household. The first thing we noticed when we got there was that Mark's mother wasn't there. His grandma, Mrs. Eleanor, welcomed us inside with a sly smile. "Welcome back. You as well. I assume you're curious about the modifications here." Her voice was light, yet there was a hint of gravity about it. "Indeed." "Mom? Where are you?" Mark looked around and inquired. Mrs. Eleanor inhaled deeply. She continued to smile. "Well, Marianne made quite a commotion when you departed. Demanded that her financial support be restored. She chose to go when I refused. According to what I've heard, she is now seeking for work and lives in a modest apartment." We looked at each other as the news sunk in. It was a significant departure from the opulent lifestyle she had been accustomed to. "There's more." Leaning forward, as though to divulge a secret, Mrs. Eleanor went on. "Your dad is thinking about getting a divorce. Her antics are too much for him." She seemed to have pushed him too far at last. She brought it on herself nonetheless. Mark's face showed a mixture of surprise and relief. "It's unbelievable. This is more than I anticipated, even though I knew things would change." I extended my hand and touched his arm. "There's a lot to process. Perhaps, though, this is for the best, an opportunity for everyone to begin over on a more sincere basis." That evening's dinner was strangely calm. Mark's mother's absence was felt, but not in the way we had expected. The dialogue was more candid. Later that night, as we went home, we had a genuine sense of family for the first time in a long time. Mark was thoughtful. Although I always longed for a change, I never imagined it would take this form. "Mom will have to make a significant adjustment." I gave a nod. "Although it's a difficult circumstance, perhaps it's a necessary stage in her development, and to find some serenity for your dad as well." We both thought about the new reality throughout the contemplative drive home. We were heading back home. The honeymoon we were returning to was different from the one we had left before. In many respects, it was an optimistic concept, but it was also disturbing. Change, however unpleasant at times, was frequently the way to something greater, and we were ready to face it together. Story 3. The day I first met Alex seems like it was yesterday. I was enjoying the cheapest coffee they had at this tiny dive cafe while keeping to myself, attempting to organize my disorganized ideas and plans. That's when he walked in, like a scene straight out of a movie, except there were no spectacular lighting or music, just the sound of the bell above the door and the smell of stale coffee mixed with his aftershave. "Is this seat taken?" he inquired, pointing to the chair across from me with a smile that could knock you off your feet. "I think it's free," I replied, trying to sound cool and not at all flustered by his sudden appearance. We started conversing, and man, it was like we were cut from the same fabric. He was into all the crap. I was from binge-watching the same trashy series to fighting about the greatest pizza topping. It's a pineapple. Fight me. After a while, we start dating, not just for casual get-togethers, but for real. It felt like I'd known him my whole life, and before we knew it, we were talking about getting wedded. At that point, the drama began. His parents. Let me tell you where something else. The first time I met them, it was like walking into a lion's den wearing a meat dress. They had this way of smiling while measuring you up, like they were judging if you were worth their time or not. "So you're the girl Alex can't stop yapping about," his mom said, her voice dripping with something that was definitely not warmth. Guilty as charged. Trying not to let her see, I shot back. She reached me. They quickly established the legislation, stating that we had to sign a prenuptial agreement. Now, I ain't no gold digger, and I sure as hell don't need anyone's money. I didn't like that, though. "I'll sign your prenup," I informed them, "but I've got one condition. If one of us cheats, the cheater pays up 100 grand. Alex appeared as the rest of unfona solo under the seaway tojereets. Giving him a fish slap. "Babe, I'd never cheat on you," he said, all wide-eyed and serious. "Yes, exactly. Before I caught him in the act, my ex had stated the same thing. Literally. This or nothing, then?" He agreed. Even though they appeared to have lost their minds, his parents did the same. We thought that was the end of it, but boy, were we wrong. One evening, we were cuddled up on the couch, a tradition we had started since moving in together. We vowed to replace our old, rickety couch, but we never did since it had somehow become our spot. The TV was on, but we weren't watching. We knew we couldn't afford the trip to Italy, but we were determined to make it happen, so we were too busy planning it. "Alex, think about it. The cuisine, wine, and artwork. We have to go," I said, my eyes sparkling with excitement. Alex tightened his arm around me and chuckled. "Emily, babe, you had me at food. But let's face it, our bank account is more camping in the backyard than romantic getaway to Venice." I playfully nudged him. "So we'll save. We'll cut back on. I don't know stuff we don't need. Like your video games." He feigned horror. "Not the video games. Take my clothing, my shoes, even my beloved coffee maker. But leave the games alone." That was us. But we laughed, always having lofty goals while keeping our modest lives in perspective. We were indifferent. We were content. The joy wasn't limited to the significant occasions. It was in the tiny things, too, like how Alex would make breakfast on Saturdays. He couldn't cook to save his life, but he'd somehow mastered the art of scrambled eggs and toast, which he'd served with a side of his terrible coffee. Those mornings are my favorite. "Hey, I'm thinking scrambled eggs today. What are your thoughts?" he'd ask, already heading to the kitchen. "Only if you promise not to burn the toast this time," I'd call out, followed by, "And I'm making the coffee one day." It was the subject we had been avoiding. We were doing dishes together, a routine activity that seemed unique since we were working together on it. "Emily, we need to talk about, starting a family." The relaxed silence was broken by Alex's statement. I paused, a plate in hand. "I know, it's scary, isn't it? What if we are unable to?" Alex turned to me, drying his hands on a towel. "After that, we'll work together to resolve it, but we won't know unless we try. Correct? I mean, how hard can it be?" I chuckled. A mix of nerves and love. Famous last words, babe. But with us, it was that way. We faced everything together, no matter what. Even when his mom started dropping not-so-subtle hints about grandchildren every chance she got, we took it in stride. "Emily, dear, when are you going to give me some grandbabies? You're not getting any younger, you know," she'd say, her voice sweet, but the message anything but. I'd bite my tongue, smile, and say, "We're working on it, aren't we, Alex?" And he'd jump in. "Yes, Mother, lay off, will you? These things require time." But as the year went on, the pressure started to build. From within, not just his mother. We wanted a family, but it wasn't happening as easily as we had hoped. Our house has been a battlefield ever since Judy discovered her new pastime of making my life a living nightmare, and the major weapon was her sharp tongue. The occasional jab was no longer enough. It was an all-out struggle with daily assaults on my self-esteem and function as a wife. It all spiraled one Sunday lunch, a day that was supposed to be laid back and peaceful. Judy, with her uncanny timing, dropped by uninvited. We were about to take a seat. The air was tense the moment she walked in, her eyes scanning the room like she was about to conduct a military inspection. "Well, isn't this quaint?" she continued, her voice dripping with disdain as she gazed at the meager buffet I'd prepared. "You really outdid yourself, Emily. It appears that you have spent the entire morning working diligently in the kitchen." In an attempt to maintain harmony, a smirk played at the corners of her mouth as her eyes briefly locked with mine. I made an effort to grin. "It's nothing fancy, Judy, just something easy and fast. Please have a seat." As we sat down, the barrage began in earnest. "You know, Emily," Judy replied, infusing her voice with contempt, "Mrs. Henderson told me about her recently born grandchild during our conversation the other day. It got me thinking, when can I expect to hear positive news from you and Alex? It's not like you're growing any younger." I felt my cheeks burn, a mix of embarrassment and anger. I glanced to Alex, hoping for some encouragement, but he was suddenly extremely engrossed in his plate. "Mom." "Come on," Alex eventually murmured, but it was half-hearted and we all knew it. Judy continued unrelentingly. "And, darling Alex, I don't intend to be nasty, but you're not a charity. You earn your money through hard work. If Emily is incapable of fulfilling her basic responsibilities as a wife, why waste it on her? It would be far more efficient to hire a cook and a cleaning service, don't you think?" That's when I couldn't keep it back any longer. "Judy, I am trying my best here. It's not like I don't want to have kids. And as for the home and my cooking, well, I didn't understand marriage was a service contract," Judy sneered. "However, it's also not a freebie. Emily, it's obvious that you're not carrying out your obligations." The rail felt heavy with strain, and I could feel the tears pricking at the back of my eyes, but what stung the most wasn't Judy's remarks. It was Alex's quiet. He finally spoke up, but it wasn't to defend me. "Yes, my mother is right. Maybe we should consider getting some help around here. Would facilitate your situation. Easier for me." It felt like a betrayal when he spoke. It was clear I was on my own in this. Judy visited more often over the course of the following few days, and her criticism got more scathing with each visit. She'd check the house, pointing out every piece of dust or a pillow out of position. "Do you think this is clean?" She'd scoff. My eyes must be deceiving me because this looks like a pigsty. Then came the comments about my appearance. "Do you have on that outfit? You know a wife should dress to please her husband." It's no surprise Alex is usually so exhausted. This is what he must return home to. I tried to fight back, Judy. I don't dress for Alex, I dress for myself. And he's always so tired because he works hard, not because of what I wear. But it was like talking to a brick wall. Judy had made up her mind about me, and nothing I said or did would change it. The greatest setback was Alex's position, or lack thereof. Every night when his mother leaves, we'd debate, "Why won't you stand up for me, Alex? She's walking all over us, and you're just letting her. Emily, she's ancient, fixed in her ways. What do you want me to do? Kick my own mom out? No. However, I would like you to be my husband, to stand by me, not her." It was evident this was more than just about Judy's dislike. It was about us, our marriage, and whether we were strong enough to stand together or let Judy's criticisms tear us apart. As the days progressed into weeks, I recognized that this wasn't simply a phase. It was a full-blown siege, and if we didn't do something soon, there might not be anything left to save. Things between me and Alex had been icy since Judy ramped up her campaign of critique. But it wasn't just the home front that was feeling the strain. Alex himself had started acting weird, and not in a "he's just stressed at work" kind of way. It was something else, something that made my stomach twist in knots. It started with the phone calls. Alex had always been pretty open about his phone. He began leaving the room whenever he received a call, even though we didn't conceal secrets from one another, and it was always the same caller ID, John Work. Who's John Work? One evening, trying to sound informal, I asked. Alex flinched, an obvious indication that he was tense. Oh, just a new guy at the office. Many inquiries. You are aware. However, it didn't end there. Alex, who is as far from a fashionista as you could get, suddenly started caring about his appearance. Gone were the days of graphic shirts and worn-out jeans. Now it was all crisp shirts and slacks and cologne. He was using cologne. Right now. He'd cared about department store smells since when? What's with the new appearance, Alex? Have you had a job interview? One morning, as I watched him comb his hair in a manner I had never seen before, I made a joke. He simply smirked a bit too fast. Just felt like changing things up. No harm in that, right? And the late nights at work, they were becoming a regular thing. Another long one. I text, trying not to seem too needy. Sorry, Em. This project is killing me. Not going to be late, I swear. He'd text back, but the clock would tick long past midnight before I heard his keys in the door. I tried to dismiss the sense that something was odd, but it stuck to me like a shadow. That's when I decided to employ a private investigator. It felt like something out of a horrible TV drama, but I had to know for sure. The evidence came in a plain brown envelope, the contents as damning as they were devastating. Photos of Alex with another woman, their closeness unmistakable, captured in frozen moments that broke our years together. But it was the recording that cut the deepest. There was no place for uncertainty in their chats, which were full of ideas and affection. They were in love, or at least he was with her. I sat there. The facts laid out in front of me, a cold awareness setting in. It was this. This was the proof that might anchor me in a tumultuous divorce. Should it come to that? Images that are courtly, moments snatched from our lives together and statements that exposed everyone, I cherish you, he had ever whispered in my ear. But I kept it all a secret. An agonizing weight I decided to bear by myself. I wasn't prepared to face him. Not quite yet. I needed a plan, a method to manage the devastation of our marriage with my dignity intact. The following days were a blur. Alex continued his charade, and I played along, the perfect wife with a smile plastered on my face and a heartbreaking silently. Our interactions became a dance around the truth. Everything was forced with every calculated phrase and every chuckle. Okay, Em. You've been silent, Alex would inquire in a seemingly sincere manner. Yes. I'm just exhausted. Work has been extremely hectic, I'd reply, the light tasting bitter on my tongue. It was another ordinary day. That is, until I happened upon a discussion that would completely alter my perspective. There I was, passing past the slightly ajar door of Alex's office, when their words attracted my attention. It was Judy, Alex's mother, and they weren't merely chatting. The tone was serious, loaded with meaning. Mom, I'm telling you that I'm at my breaking point. It's not just the children. I've lost all feeling for Emily. We seem more like housemates than husband and wife. Alex's voice drifted through the void, strained and exhausted. Judy's voice, ever so sharp, replied, well, of course you feel that way. She's not giving you a child. What else has she contributed to this marriage? Let's face it. Let's not rush things, though. My 70th birthday is coming up, and we wouldn't want to miss out on a nice present from her. Now, would we? The cynicism in her words was like a knife twisting in my belly. They were conspiring against me, use me until they thought it would be easier to ignore me, and we can throw her out after we receive a great pricey gift, right? Alex spoke in a chilly, businesslike tone. That's right. Dear, just bide your time a bit longer, Judy affirmed, in a tone full of hate. I stood there, anchored to the place, a mix of disbelief and wrath bubbling inside me. They were organizing my departure from this family with the same casualness as if I were organizing a shopping list. Although I was deeply hurt, it also gave me a strong desire for vengeance. They felt they could use me, dump me at their pleasure. I would demonstrate to them that I wasn't only a pawn in their devious scheme. A few days later, over a family dinner that felt more like a farce than a meal, Judy brought up her forthcoming birthday with the same smile that I had learned to despise. "So, Emily, dear, what are you planning for my birthday?" she inquired, leaning in. "Something special, I hope." I met her gaze, my face, a mask of calm. "In fact, Judy, I was considering hosting you for dinner at the most exclusive establishment in the city, an unforgettable night." She gave Alex a brief, contented glance as her eyes glowed with want. They believed they had me trapped, but little did they know I was already 2 moves ahead. "Oh, Emily, it sounds great. Just close family, you know. Keep it intimate," Judy murmured, her voice dripping phony warmth. "Naturally, Judy. It will be enjoyable for us." The words tasted like ash in my tongue when I answered. The weeks leading up to Judy's 70th birthday felt like a gradual march towards D-Day. Every smirk from her, every indifferent shrug from Alex fueled my resolve. The idea was simple yet bold, exactly like the movies arrange a sumptuous dinner at the city's most luxury restaurant under the cover of a kind gift. Then reveal the secret. But like any good plot, the devil was in the details. The stress at home was evident the night before the celebration. Alex, unaware to the tempest developing, was lazily sitting on the couch, looking through his phone. "Is everything scheduled for tomorrow?" Without looking up, he asked. "Oh, you might say that." With a casual tone that belied the internal struggle, I responded. The day arrived, and as people started to enter the elegant dining room allocated for Judy event, the air was heavy with expectation. It was the adrenaline of what was about to happen, not nerves, that made my heart beat. Judy. But the queen bee reveled in the attention and luxuriated in her surroundings. "You've surpassed yourself, Emily. This location is amazing," she explained, her voice loud enough for surrounding diners to hear. The meal continued with the forced merriment that accompanies such family get-togethers as we all got settled in. Laughs were shared, stories exchanged, and then, as the dessert plates were cleared away, the waiter approached with the final act of the evening, the bill. In a stealthy manner, he leaned in and told us that the supper cost $3,000. Without wasting a beat, I gave out my card. The act, unseen by most. Alex chose that moment to reveal his secret while wearing a smile that stopped short of his eyes. "Emily, I think it's time everyone know. I've had enough of this. Of us. I'd like a divorce." The words lingered in the atmosphere, a poisonous haze that appeared to choke all other noise in the room. Before I could even digest the full weight of his sentence, Judy shouted up, her voice shrill and cruel. "Since that's publicly known, I believe it would be best for you to leave, Emily. You're no longer included in our family celebration tonight." Deathly silence fell on the room. Everyone was watching me to see how I would break, but I remained strong. With a serenity I didn't sense. I nodded, got up, and left without saying anything. As I headed home, the chilly night air hit me like a slap. The finality of all that had transpired flooding over me in waves. A strategy had been established by the time I arrived at his flat. I packed the necessities. The cold resolve replaces the numbness. It was this, the end of one life and the commencement of another. My phone began to buzz as I was zipping the final suitcase, a constant, demanding vibration that I originally ignored. Curiosity, however, got the better of me. On the other end, Judy's voice screamed, "Emily!" The payment failed to process. Now is the time to fix this. The irony of my readiness for the inevitable is lovely and delicious. I had secured my departure strategy. I had disabled the shared account, knowing that would be the first thing Alex would try to use against me. Oh, that's a shame, Judy. But since I'm no longer part of the family, as you so beautifully phrased it, I'm afraid you'll have to sort this out yourselves. Even over the phone, I could feel her fury, but it was wonderful to hear. My marriage had turned into a farce, and the mayhem that resulted was a fitting conclusion. The restaurant employees were reportedly demanding money for Judy's increasingly violent outbursts, and ultimately the police arrived to quell the commotion. She had changed. Ultimately, Alex and his family had to come up with the funds to pay the amount, a beautiful restitution for the humiliation and treachery I had endured at their hands. It was like waking up to the aftermath of a hurricane the morning after the disastrous meal. As I returned for the final time to the house we formerly shared, I was carrying a set of divorce papers, my plan, and my determination. Tension thick enough to sever with a knife crackled in the air as soon as I walked through the door. There were Judy and Alex, who appeared to have been fighting. They appeared to be united in animosity at the sight of me. "You've got some nerve showing up here after last night." With a mixture of incredulity and rage, Alex spat out his face. Judy. However, the viper was fast to apply her venom. "Ungrateful wretch. We are ashamed in front of the entire city because of you. You have no idea how embarrassing it was to have the cops soothe me. People were filming and laughing." I answered their rage with a calm. "It did not embarrass me." "You believe that's your biggest difficulty right now?" The divorce papers were thrown on the table by me. On top are the pictures of Alex's adultery. This is what you should be more worried about. Alex's face was pale when he picked up the pictures. Looking over his shoulder was his mother. When they discovered how much I had, their indignation changed to disbelief and finally to terror. "Shall we also remember the prenuptial agreement?" I went on, speaking steadily. "You are dishonest. You pay $100,000 to be exact." A snarl twisted Judy's face. "You wouldn't risk it. This cannot be done to us." "Yes, but I will and I can." I spoke in a chilly tone. "Alex, the last one." At last he realized the truth of the situation, changed strategies. "Let's speak about this, please, Em. We are able to repair it." I couldn't contain my laughter, hard and bitter. "Make it right." "You believe that a few words will be enough to reverse everything?" "No, Alex, it's done." "Ever the manipulator?" Judy tried a gentler tone, her voice brimming with fake worry. "Think about what you're doing, Emily, my love. This will demolish us. The ship has set sail. Judy, you ought to have considered that earlier." In a last-ditch effort to save what they could, the begging evolved into pleading their words. But I had already made up my mind. I had had enough of being the victim. Their machinations and falsehoods are over. In the end, Alex had no choice but to borrow the money from his parents to pay me. Check in hand, I walked out of the house for the last time. After everything fell into place, I felt as though a burden had been lifted. I used the payout from Alex to put a down payment on a small but cozy place of my own. It's strange how much tranquility can be found inside the boundaries of a space that is exclusively yours, where each corner serves as a haven from the turmoil of the past. Life's quieter now, and I like it that way. I've got a job that keeps me occupied, neighbors who grin and nod. A small garden, too. I have to take care of that. However, the grapevine occasionally sends me a delicious tidbit about Judy and Alex. I was getting coffee from the locals' hangout on the corner just the other day, and I bumped into someone from the old neighborhood. After the normal greetings, they leaned in, voice lowering to a conspiratorial whisper. "Hello? Are you aware of the most recent issue between your ex and his mother?" With eyes shining with the excitement of rumor, they inquired. I couldn't help but raise an eyebrow, a mix of curiosity and detachment taking hold. I can't claim to have any knowledge. They began, obviously relishing the occasion. "It seems Judy's not too pleased with Alex's new girlfriend. Word is they've been at it like cats and dogs. Makes things much easier than they are for you." The discussion moved on, but as I walked away, coffee in hand, I couldn't escape the sensation of total relief. News like that might have given me the willies in the past, but not now. Now it was simply another element of someone else's tale. My biggest worries these days are whether I'll ever learn yoga without appearing like a newborn deer on ice, or whether my tomatoes will mature before the squirrels get to them. Life's simpler, quieter, and incomparably sweeter on this side of turmoil.